Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, December 3rd. Starting maybe a little bit late in noon, but not that late. Not even really enough to call late by my standards. I'm trying something different here, so I may immediately recognize that I'm just not streaming enough bandwidth. I'm trying to once again enable quality of service on my router to catch up with. A slight problem. I've managed to take it from complete total disconnects. Just I assume it's because there's too many devices like on the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum at this point. It's just like the maximum number of devices between what I'm using in my personal Wi-Fi network and what everybody else around me, around my house is using seems to just create too much of a drop, too much of an increase in congestion that it can't be handled. So much so that I am keeping in the back of my head the idea of just straight up, I almost want to keep this and then re-roll this one. Well, we haven't played Havencraft in a while, so I'm gonna stick with that. So yeah, and that worked out fine. Gave us 10 more gold, theoretically. Yeah, I'm keeping in my back pocket the idea of buying USB to Ethernet adapters for my Wi-Fi TV, Roku TV, since it doesn't have an Ethernet port, and just trying that. Getting everything possible, or that is realistically possible, hardwired is not a terrible idea, because once you have something plugged in hardwired, that's a gigabit up, a gigabit down, bidirectional on my network, compared to what I'm trying to do is limit everything to about 50 megabits per second up and down, and there's no real way to even limit the up the way I have it set up and the way it actually seems like it's gonna work. I wonder why I did to get this extra pack, but whatever. It's probably just the free version of the battle pass. So right now it may turn out that we run into just like some bad bandwidth situation here, but maybe not. Like, I'm not seeing any drop frames due to network issues. That is something I think that should be considered with the Tableau, is that while it probably does somewhat work as an over-the-air DVR that streams, probably somewhat works over Wi-Fi, you almost certainly need to plug it into a wired source, and everything that is getting video from it needs to get from a wired source too, if you can possibly cause that to happen. I guess we're gonna just try for Havencraft in this Grand Prix. Let's see, Havencraft. Is this Havencraft? Yes, it is. Oh, so I guess I have played a lot of Havencraft lately, because I always play that. I just wasn't thinking straight as to that being the thing called Havencraft. The names don't really connect to the custom characters to the cards. So yeah, that's pretty much about the only thing that I managed to do in an effort to still try and rest my eyes. I really didn't do anything yesterday. I mean, I definitely thought about making video game coverage, but I'm still just basically taking this week off. Maybe I'll do something on the weekend. And then I did try to work on the macro for a brief hour or so before this. I started streaming today, which only really proved to like show that yes, I can get it to automatically press Control V and paste into the YouTube title form, but I can't figure out a way so far to get it to actually focus and click on the form. So there could be a scenario where it will just wait for me to delete and empty the field, and as soon as I've manually deleted and emptied the field, then there could be it could paste in the field form, but I don't know if that's particularly the way I'd want to go about it. Like, that does seem kind of crazy.
Eternal supplication.
And it may just be easier to have the program just wait until I put the right thing into the titles of YouTube videos and just have this awkward setup. Like, it's very important here in my mind to actually get this since this is like the third attempt on this program. It's kind of really important to get it to just work and get some actual benefit on it, because I've already spent 2 previous attempts to automate this, and the reward is big, but the chances of getting that reward have so far proven to be 0. So it's basically like playing the lottery at this point, and I typically don't want to gamble for big rewards and waste a lot of time and energy going into that. Plus, I have the ability to focus on it more. Let's see. Yeah, I'll have to work on the program more to then schedule Shadowverse videos anyway, so...
I've been desecrated!
So there's definitely a point there where I could work on it some more and try again. Even if I get it mostly working now and I have to just coordinate with it and do one step manually, I'm still eliminating significantly large amounts of the other steps. And yeah, since we know we can only go a year in advance, if I schedule a whole bunch of videos and I'm a year in advance, I then have a whole bunch of free time to work on the macro more, work on the program more to automate the scheduling and uploading of things. And there are phase 2 ideas certainly that can happen, because I will want to get rid of like go back and edit all of my previous videos to a certain level. Like, just if I could get in screens on all the previous videos, that would be great. I don't think that's the case now. At a certain point, I don't think I can even go that far back, because I have so many videos that the way to do that is pretty much non-existent. But even if I could get the most recent 4,000 or 2,000 videos to have end screens on them, and that would push people to potentially watch more of my videos, that would be great. Although, still need subscribers.
Abandon all reason and give in to desire. Do not seek what is not there.
Yeah, even though my watch time by YouTube standards is pathetic, and the number of views is pathetic, I personally think if YouTube was going to try and get rid of content on their platform just to save space, they really have a lot of other people they could target that are lower than me. People who put up videos that have literally just one view for their entire channel, or less than 100 views for their entire channel. And it would make a lot of logical sense for them to say, hey, we've determined this channel here is really just for your private home videos, and that's not what we want YouTube to be anymore, so we're going to delete it. Of course, that would piss off a lot of people who do have their private home videos on YouTube.
When will this cruelty end?
And certainly the opposite way of being targeted could happen is, as someone who has a significantly high number of videos on YouTube, they could say, hey, you have way more videos than most, and we're going to target my channel instead. That is equally believable. But they haven't made any indication that they would do either. I saw a YouTube video basically saying when you are at YouTube Studio, you still see the ratio of likes to dislikes. Maybe that's something that they will quickly adjust and change, but the idea of hiding the dislike numbers and making the creators of the videos, the content creators, bend over backwards to see the number of dislikes is dishonest, to say the least, because it is in a different form factor right there for everybody to see. When you're scheduling videos, when you're doing anything to your videos, you can't ignore it or hide it, really. And yeah, if YouTube is going to try and make an argument that they're going to do a better job of not making every single content creator on YouTube feel like they're garbage who isn't working hard enough, which is basically how all the messages get taken on the back end of YouTube, is that every single metric comes off as we want you to make more, get more views and get more ads for us to sell. They're basically evil taskmasters pretending like they aren't. If they were going to really focus on that and trying to stop that from happening, then they would have had to really done a much better job of rewriting and changing how their entire website looks. Like it would be fairly easy to just start from the idea of, we're going to have a setting that says just hide all metrics from me. I don't care about metrics. I don't care about views. I don't care about likes. Quit giving me these tooltips. Quit giving me these hints. When I go to YouTube Studio, I just want to make my own personal project that I'm happy with creating, and I don't care how many people see it or watch it. If there was such a setting like that to start with,
my thunderbolts shall guide you.
then
If they don't kill you first.
that would I think
Horizon gives me inspiration.
be preferable for a lot of content creators. So much so that there's a decent argument that they just shouldn't show any metrics or even calculate metrics. They could save themselves some processing power by just not calculating metrics until people are in the YouTube Partner Program and trying to monetize. But then also that would make it even more impossible for new channels to ever be in the YouTube Partner Program. I also saw another YouTube video, if we're going to just talk about and rant about YouTube for a short time here, where there's now these YouTube videos that look like people are just cooking, and arguably these are like the fake misinformation cooking channels that A, lie to you how to cook things, or B, lie to you as to what the final product will look like. But apparently they are now having narration on top of the cooking, telling some kind of ridiculously weird stories. These like weird, or maybe even computer generated stories. I think it may very well be a experiment in if YouTube's subtitle auto generation feature can be manipulated. But yeah, they're telling stories of like violence and sexual misconduct and things like that, and they're phrasing it and making it sound like it's for kids. And frankly, if a kid had their headphones in and the parents were looking over their shoulders, the video totally doesn't match what the audio would be. Now, arguably, I don't think you could do a lot to change or to make a rule saying that all video must match the audio. At a certain level, the video I make doesn't 100% match the audio, particularly when I'm live streaming. So that would be kind of unfair to try and block that, but yeah, there is a certain argument if things are just weird, like it makes no logical sense for this content to succeed, or it makes no logical sense for this content to exist at all. YouTube probably should start putting the brakes on those kinds of things. It's very much in the vein of the cartoon YouTube videos where it's just like Elsa peeing and just like Mickey Mouse gets his head chopped off, just like ridiculous computer generated things. I wouldn't be surprised if some of it is just straight up state sponsored trolling. Yeah, I guess trolling is the best phrase to use. And YouTube's so big that there's almost certainly every week another new scam or collection of videos that most people won't see or ever hear about. So
Let us pierce the twilight flight
it would be nice if there was a better way to
I envy you.
create some control there, or some sanity there. I think in a lot of ways Reddit, for all of its problems, is probably the best system out there that we know of. A almost truly democratic system. I don't know why I exited out there. With the main problem with Reddit being that a small number of oligarchs, for lack of a better term, own and control a significant percentage of the subreddits on Reddit and moderate them. But YouTube could certainly get around that. And if YouTube just straight up had the downvote, instead of getting rid of the downvote, had the downvote have more power. They've made the downvote just a signal of engagement when it really should be a signal of dislike. And the goal of the algorithm should not be to try for the most amount of engagement. And that is the problem, I guess, of a corporation like Google or Alphabet trying to make money and running YouTube to make money, when YouTube, like most forms of entertainment, is either going to end up in the hands of the elite production companies, TV companies, music companies, movie companies, or it's going to be just have to be something like PBS, where it's just like public funding. One of the things about PBS in particular in the United States is that while there are occasionally people that complain that there is public funding going to PBS, the reality of it is it's a really small amount percentage-wise. Like less than 25% of all of PBS's funding is actually from taxpayers, taxes, and the rest is donated from people who actually support the content that they're releasing. And that creates a scenario, while PBS is not particularly that interesting to a lot of people, it's also not really hated by that many people too. Like, I can definitely name way more annoying TV shows on ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, or yeah, any of the big four over PBS. I could name 4 or 5 times more annoying, just 4 or 5 times as many or more annoying shows that on those channels that are incredibly panderous and not really good quality. Well, we should probably just wrap up, start going through the news now. It's not a lot to talk about. Anyways, I started off saying that, and yeah, there is a chance that my eyes will start hurting again, or just get sleepy, so I now have like 3 different reasons why I might just want to stop streaming as soon as possible. There's not a lot of games that came out, but there's some more delay announcements and a few trailers, but really not a lot of video game news either. Here we have Gamatsu saying Siberia the World Before for PC has been delayed to Q1. This, I guess, maybe is a game in the Siberia series and not its own standalone Siberia game, but I'm not sure, really. Titan Quest Eternal Embers is a DLC that is now out for Titan Quest, which I'm not sure if I own just a base game of Titan Quest. Titan Quest looks a lot like Diablo, and arguably maybe should be the Diablo clone to play, to the point where maybe Diablo shouldn't even be the description. I've definitely thought about that as far as Metroidvanias, that we're getting kind of ridiculously caught in the weeds as far as calling things Metroidvanias when there rarely are Metroid games, and half the time when you think Metroid, you're thinking Metroid Prime, which is a very different experience than the original Metroid game, and Castlevania games haven't come out in quite a while.
My barrier is impenetrable.
And so it probably is better to just start to describe them differently with more generic terms that can stand the test of time. Yeah, it's like that Star Trek The Next Generation episode where it's the alien species that only speaks in references to other stories and basically memes. So it's like Chakra when the walls fell was, it's something like that was one of the phrases, and so you would have had to know exactly who Chakra was and what happened when the walls fell to understand the meaning behind that phrase, which is a ridiculous way to have a language. So if we were saying like Samus when the Metroids attacked, or that would be it. And as much as I may like visual memes and visual language in general, there's undoubtedly going to be a problem understanding meme pictures in 100 years. So we'll have historians looking at that and not understanding it at all. It's a different thing from, say, the kanji or Chinese, Japanese letters, where they're pictures or they're symbols that kind of look like pictures, and so you kind of know where they're derived from. In that case, the symbols are based on very simplistic, practical things. Though man, woman, house, those are things that are likely to last at least 100 years as symbols, whereas man turning around and looking at woman while girlfriend is staring at him staring at other woman as a meme is a harder to guarantee concept, that harder concept to be guaranteed to be understood in 100 years. Or woman yelling at cat.
No! Stop!
Gunfire. Stop! Is all sin.
I saw an article, and I'm just kind of rambling here, but of them making more progress towards the idea of encoding data into strands of DNA. And that's a cool idea and all, but the reading and writing aspect there is the thing that would have to really scale down. We would have to have something that was capable of holding DNA in some kind of form factor, and arguably it's not something that we would want to have bigger than a micro SD. You'd probably want to be smaller. So I imagine if you imagine a micro SD that had a like lens in the center of it, or a piece of glass in the center of it, and there was a reader that was just visually reading DNA at an incredibly small level, that might be something. Or it could be it's something the size of a micro SD that's a solid state device. If we can get to that level, then that would be great. Also, though, you run into the problem of there's so much data in what you could encode in a small bit of DNA that you are gonna potentially just have, here's the base image of the internet and all data known to mankind. We're just gonna start from that. And there might be real value in that, certainly, if all the information that all of mankind knew was by default already in your hard drive. That would simply then be a game of referencing things when you go to a website and see something new. Or potentially you could have incredibly large compression technologies that just have entire caches of data. For instance, if you had the entirety of the U.S. Constitution, which is not a particularly big bit of information, but if you had that easily and quickly accessible, quickly is going to be probably an issue too. But if you had it accessible already on your hard drive, then a website could say, like, reference U.S. Constitution version 1, and then it would just, instead of downloading the same text that might be used on multiple websites, it can just pull it up, caching it, basically making an index. But yeah, speed would definitely be an issue too. And I suspect there will be as many as a dozen technologies that compete and come about before the idea of potentially widespread usage of DNA as a storage form would make sense. We know several have been in development. It probably, when it gets implemented, if it ever gets implemented, will be incredibly slow, and you might very well see like every single phone call being recorded and hidden in some CIA facility. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not already happening, and everything is just being stored on DNA already. But that creates still an issue of sorting through things. It's very easy to be overwhelmed by too much content and too much data. But yeah, I could see the entire Library of Congress, just every book, being on a single micro SD and that just being handed to people. Or every single movie up to like this year being on a micro SD, and then it's just handed to people. Possibly tried to sold to people at an incredibly high price. I think very few people would say, alright, I'll pay you $150 a month, or even like a cable bill's worth of content, like $100 a month to be given something that has everything on it. It would have to be basically up front. They would have to demand a incredibly high amount of just an incredibly high amount of money for that, assuming things don't just become straight up free. You're not going to really be able to encode DNA on DNA, so maybe the only data that's of any value in the future at all is something on the scale of DNA. Just ridiculous amounts of code. Anyways, back to video game news. And I'm getting distracted fairly easily. I'm also not winning, which is fairly typical. Bloomberg is saying Sony Interactive Entertainment is planning a new subscription service to rival Xbox Game Pass, codenamed Spartacus, and expected to launch in spring of 2022. I mean, I guess it gives them something to do while they can't sell PlayStation 5s because they don't have any.
I'll get it right this time. This little hex's payback.
But
You were done for.
Generally thinking about it, I don't feel like there's a high chance of
This is so hard.
like, I really don't feel like there's a high chance of success as far as PlayStation having a subscription service.
Nothing I can't handle.
Just because PlayStation, while it has its exclusives, it also has a censorship issue that is going to really hurt it. If a couple years ago the PlayStation had come out with a subscription service ahead of or in line with the Xbox Game Pass, it would be a different case, because they could have easily had a subscription service that gave a bunch of JRPGs that take forever to play. Thus, the Japanese audience in particular would have stayed on that subscription service quite a bit. I imagine the Japanese would also be very happy to not have to buy discs in a lot of cases. Of course, the limited edition collectors would still want to buy discs and get all the rewards around buying things with discs, but the average gamer in Japan, probably having less room, would appreciate a subscription service. But yeah, knowing the censorship issue, knowing that there really is only exclusives, knowing that a lot of these exclusives that once were obviously going to be locked into only PlayStation consoles are now coming to PC, there's very little that you could imagine they could offer there. I wouldn't be surprised, since it's Sony, if the subscription service heavily is focused on the idea of you get PlayStation, a Sony PlayStation Game Pass, and it's not really a Game Pass so much as it is a combined movie and Game Pass and music and Game Pass, and you would see a lot more focus around getting a free CD or album from Sony Music, or a free movie from Sony Movie Productions, and barely getting just one game a month, if it even is a monthly service. I wouldn't be surprised if it is also heavily more in the lines of quality with the Nintendo Online service than it is in lines with quality of the Xbox Game Pass service. Remember also that Sony has a significantly lower level of trustworthiness as far as online services go. They just really don't have the chops for that. On the other hand, it seems like Microsoft with Windows 11 and Edge is straight up just putting adware into Edge, and specifically just like making Windows 11 require Edge to use it, to the point where I don't think there's any reason why I would recommend anybody upgrade to Windows 11. In a lot of ways, I think hold out to Windows 10. Even if it gets down to a point where you aren't getting security updates, there might be an aftermarket product that is better as far as installing an antivirus on Windows 10 than going to Windows 11. And if you can just hold out long enough, there is a decent chance that the Steam OS is going to be the OS for most people to use, even if you're not a gamer per se. Steam OS may bring in a lot more people willing to work on a Linux branch and make it the next big thing, because what we've had up until this point is a lot of Linux fanatics and fans making different distributions of Linux, and rarely has it been a case where it's people who don't want to actually have customization or a whole bunch of options coming into the Linux world. Linux Mint is probably an example of a operating system designed for normal people. You could definitely jump from Windows to Linux Mint right now, and you wouldn't miss too much particularly if you're not using that many apps in the first place. But SteamOS may blow the likes of Ubuntu back in the day and Linux Mint today out of the water, as far as here's a company that's going to maybe put a lot of effort into it. The amount of money behind Linux Mint is probably pocket change compared to the amount of money that Valve could put behind a Linux operating system. SteamOS, if they actually care and stick with it. And honestly, they only have to care and stick with it long enough for them to then just open source it and hand it to a fan base to keep it and maintain it and grow it. It wouldn't be crazy to see SteamOS be the seed in which several other variants and different versions of Linux and flavors of Linux come from. And much like how Debian is kind of the base version of Ubuntu and Linux Mint and several other operating systems, SteamOS may become the base version, even if SteamOS is based on another base version. In a lot of ways, Android cell phones are like that, where practically every phone, every manufacturer has a slightly different version of Linux and running, or Android running. Running on the phones, slightly different instances, versions, updates. Speaking of software, also, Blender 3.0 has been announced. It's, I think, out now, and Blender is probably the best 3D modeling animation software out there. It's definitely the best open source one. I don't know if there really is another software in particular that does everything Blender can theoretically do that is used by the industry. I wouldn't be surprised if there is still a lot of people using Adobe Premiere. No, it would be probably Adobe Photoshop making 3D models, and then Adobe After Effects to add effects after that. That would have been the more standard way for things to happen, is for you to use Photoshop and After Effects, but I'm not sure that really is the best way to do things now. And it may be very much that people use Photoshop and After Effects still, but then they have a whole bunch of plugins or a whole bunch of other softwares that they jump around trying to do specific things. Now, Blender in gaming isn't really used that much. You definitely could make 3D models and then import them into probably Unreal or Unity and then use those game engines there. Oh, speaking of importing things into game engines, apparently, according to American McGee, which I guess take his word with a grain of salt a little bit, because I don't know if he's not just kind of an internal hype man that makes a do of nothing. But apparently American McGee, the name behind American McGee's Alice and Alice Madness Returns, has been asked to write a press release comment on the fact that a unnamed big name celebrity is being signed for some kind of audio or visual event. More than likely it's either a TV or a movie thing. It would be very weird if EA has licensed American McGee's Alice to be a soundtrack, but that does mean, at least according to American McGee, that there's a much higher chance of there being a third Alice game being made and getting funded. Pretty much he's already gotten the yes, he just needs to be able to get like $33 million together, and that's the hard part, is how do you get $33 million to create a game when the publisher doesn't want to give, when EA as the publisher doesn't want to give them the $33 million. Honestly, the $33 million may very well just be like a percentage of the total budget. And it is questionable whether a new Alice game would even make $33 million in profit. So the actual game has gone nowhere. In fact, so much so that he said that he's basically would get sued if he tried to put any of the concept art, the pre-alpha art that he does and makes, and his company makes, and his artists in China make for him. That he would definitely get a cease and desist if he even tried to put it in a game engine, because those rights haven't been negotiated. He just has the rights to make a pitch and a spec pitch, basically, and make concept art. And so he's just working on his character Bible. Now the problem with that idea is, if you take it on the face value, it sounds like, okay, this is very inside baseball, but this very plausibly is how all games are made. On the other hand, from the outside looking in, I wouldn't be surprised if there is very little actual intention for American McGee to ever actually make a game, and that he is doing something not unlike Yandere Simulator, where he is aggrandizing himself by live streaming and playing the old games, and in every single live stream he's selling merchandise. He's selling plushies and posters and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's really all this is about, is he sells his merchandise better if people believe there actually is an Alice game coming about. Now, if there's a movie or TV show coming about from it, I would assume a movie. It could be very much like a Netflix Cowboy Bebop. I frankly would be surprised if it isn't something like that, where it's just kind of not true to life. It could be very different. There's a lot of things that could happen in the production that makes it not particularly desirable to the fans of the game. In a lot of ways, I think most people would hate it even more than they would hate something like Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, the live action remake of that, because you have the Cowboy Bebop anime, you have the kind of lesser needed to be watched movie, Knocking on Heaven's Door, and then you have this live action remake, which is probably a lot worse than Knocking on Heaven's Door. And none of those really take away from the nostalgia of the original series unless you let them. Whereas you're kind of getting directly spit in the face of if they make a movie and then they're not making a game there. Had they at some point started just making the awful Resident Evil movies and stopped making Resident Evil games for an incredibly long amount of time, the gamers, the fans, would not be happy about that. So if a movie does come out, they kind of need to at least pretend like they've greenlit a remaster, which honestly, a remaster of the original game and Madness Returns is probably a better move than trying to make a third game. Like, I don't feel like the second game, Madness Returns, really ended at on such a cliffhanger that it matters. But yeah, we may be hearing something from American McGee's Alice. It would be weird if it's a theatrical movie in theaters release, but I wouldn't be surprised about that either. I also didn't move fast enough to actually buy any games for this sale, which is fine. Like the winter sale, I'll buy a bunch of games regardless of whether they are giving trading cards or anything like that. But yeah, I'll get a bunch of games in the winter sale. That's fine. If anything, that's makes for a better time in general. Like I should probably buy things during the October sale and the December sale. That way, during Black Friday, which I didn't even really buy that much during Black Friday, but it would have been nice to have even more budget potentially for November. The October, November, and December months are the worst months as far as extra shopping goes.
This is merely the beginning.
And I am fairly divided whether I would want to see another Amazon Prime Day that happened several months earlier. It's probably a good idea though, because had I not been going specifically hard on shopping during Amazon Prime Day, I probably wouldn't have spent much at all. Moving on, back to video game news. The Steam Deck has final packaging and dev kits for you to see. Basic cardboard box. I was wondering if there is possibly a way that you could get the instructions printed on a cardboard box, and then you could unfold the cardboard box to get all the instructions instead of a piece of paper like this. You probably could do something like that, but it would then have you disassemble the cardboard box, and then you might not be able to send it back in its original packaging, which, like, cardboard is fairly easy to pretend like it's recycled. So I'm not saying anything here crazy as far as like a blister pack or a lot of boxes on top of boxes. Here we can see there's several descriptions of locations of where you can play it, I suppose. In a test chamber being a reference to Portal on a Ferris wheel. Let's see, and it's all in different languages. And so you have this initial startup guide, and then you have a case here and what looks like maybe a power brick separate as a device, which that kind of seems bad. In the case, this is a soft shell case that looks alright. This little hole here seems a little weird, I would say. Yeah. You would kind of, I think, want more cushioning in the center, because it feels like you could just grab the center of this case where you normally would grab it and crush it and potentially still break the screen, which would be your number one concern, where I would want this just to be more solid. It's not like this is in line. What's funny too is this is an all silver Steam Deck, which looks different than how we've seen them before. Yeah, I assume that this is just a let's see.
Hostile life form detected.
Open in a new tab. See if we can just
Sustained.
look at the picture. Yeah.
Whatever shall I do with you?
Zoom in and
No! Stop!
can't pan at that point. Yeah, you have like a companion cube type label here on this box. I have to just assume that this is a power supply, and it must be a fairly beefy power supply, big brick. What's interesting here is you don't really see any labeling here that is in the blue Steam font, which indicates to my thought that they are slowly getting away from the blue theme. You see Valve here is just in black and white. You have colorful, your games are going places, and then you have this blue circle and this backward C Steam Deck logo. Nothing here is a dark blue. Everything is mostly black and white. So, yeah.
Smiles are the best medicine. You're done for.
There isn't a lot there that's that interesting. I should probably put $5 down. In general. Like, am I willing to waste $5 to get a Steam Deck? Yeah, I don't know if I'd really want to get a Steam Deck 1. I feel like the second generation of a Steam Deck almost certainly would be a lot better. Very much in the way that if I could go back in time and tell myself to get an Xbox, I wouldn't tell myself to get an Xbox earlier to get the original Xbox. I would go back and tell myself to get an Xbox 360 on day one instead of getting the 360 4 or 5 years into its launch.
Feel free to call on me again.
Yeah, I definitely think for such small integrated systems, a Steam Deck 2 has a higher chance of succeeding. And I'm still not sure it's what I personally would want or use. I may very well install SteamOS on my main gaming PC with way better stats instead, because that would make a lot of sense.
Defeat is also an acceptable conclusion.
Interesting that they conceded there. It really had no reason to concede, but whatever. Yeah. It would probably make a lot more sense to install SteamOS on my main computer for me, and then have the only thing that looks like a Switch that I own be an actual Switch. And even in that case, like, as I think about should I get a Switch OLED or like the original version of the Switch, honestly, I think the original version of the Switch is perfectly fine for me because I'm going to play it docked. Like, let's just be realistic here. I don't go anywhere. I have no use for a Switch to not be docked. I could probably get a decent deal with a moderately scratched up Switch screen that's been kind of heavily used. Get a Pro controller on it because I'm probably never going to play with the Joy-Cons anyways. They're too small in my hand. And then just play it docked for the few games I want to play and then be done with it. Moving on, a Eurogamer article was linked to me. Apparently, I have not done any ad blocking on Eurogamer, but also in fairness, I don't really go to Eurogamer for too many news stories. PlayStation Plus is Godfall Challenger Edition is not a trial, the developer insists. It's a cut down version sold separately for $15. Lets players try 3 end-game modes and provides a sampling of high-end loot and skill points so you can test the game at max level. I don't see any way, regardless of whether they want to call it the trial edition or not, I don't see how you call that anything other than a paid trial. It doesn't feel like, even in their own description, it is a complete product. In itself. Whereas, you know, if you had taken out a lot of the characters in, let's say, Borderlands, since I'm a little bit more familiar with Borderlands, if you had gotten rid of one of the 4 main original characters in Borderlands 1 and sold it, that still would not really feel like a separate game that makes that much sense after the fact. Yeah, I can't imagine. It would have to be a game that has something annoying to it. I've said if, like, you had Final Fantasy and you took out most of the grinding and just abridged it and made a remaster like the remaster of Final Fantasy VII, that is probably the closest case where you could say something is not a trial. Because yes, the remake of Final Fantasy VII, I think is the number, is not a trial for the original Final Fantasy VII, although some people I think might argue that it actually is, because you are treated to the idea that you might want to go back and play the original game. And in this example, that's assuming that Final Fantasy VII's remake was completely done and there wasn't more content they were still working on. But that's about the only case I can think of, is some of these JRPGs. If you could abridge that, get rid of a lot of the grinding and just move the story faster, then I could think, yes, but you would want to be able to see most of the content there. I would say you'd still want to see at least 75% of the content, and it doesn't feel like the Champion Edition is really showing you anything close to that percentage of content. It definitely feels like it's much closer to giving you something closer to 20 or 30% of the content. THQ Nordic apparently has a game called This Is the President, and at some point there is this video called How to Get Rid of 2 Supreme Court justices, and they're making a joke here that somebody Googled that in the Google and the FBI showed up, which sadly the truth is that it does seem like there are some cases where that has happened. And frankly, if you're the FBI, that's a scenario you should never let happen whatsoever, is showing up to the front door of somebody and announcing yourself because somebody is Googling something, revealing that you're tracking people who are Googling things in general. In fact, even tracking people based on their Googling is all just kind of unnecessary waste of government effort. Because the number of people you catch versus the number of people looking up a video game trailer is going to be insignificantly small. Like, and it points to the obvious fact that the FBI has probably got too bloated of a budget and has far too overreaching programs that are far too ineffective. Like, the FBI, as a organization who only has to barely justify itself, should bend over backwards to really justify itself and be able to show 1,000 court cases where people were caught, convicted, and were actually threats to society. And we talk about economics a lot here. The FBI really needs to show that it's not just the FBI and the CIA and the NSA all together, all the organizations. They need to show that they're actually trying to protect the US citizens in a way that the US citizens would appreciate, and that they aren't just trying to protect rich people or rich people's interests. And they fail, and they've historically failed to really endow themselves and make themselves look like they are the good guys. Yeah, there was a court case that happened that was settled maybe a month or two ago, where a sheriff deputy was sent to her house basically by a principal because a teenage girl put on Instagram or Twitter or something that she had COVID, and then they sued them for violating her free speech and threatening to arrest her or her father for her exercising her free speech to say she had COVID, even if it was potentially never proven she actually did have COVID. It doesn't even matter. You can lie, and sheriffs shouldn't be showing up at your front door threatening to arrest you. Real shocking abuse of free speech. I can't see how there aren't lots of other instances in which that goes unreported. But I will have to blame THQ Nordic a little bit for trying to do something a little bit controversial there for no good reason, and potentially causing concern at the very least. And I could certainly point the citizens to the idea of having the Onion Router browser and or Brave at the very least browser. It's called the Brave browser. Having those and using those in general instead. I think the Brave browser is probably a great one to be using, although I still am on Chrome myself. I have a lot of extensions, but that would make it kind of difficult to move over.
Go ahead and play for now, fairies.
Moving on. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection is now on Steam as far as a page, so we can just go ahead and put this on the follow list. Looks good, but in a lot of ways, this collection, I think, is definitely trying to emphasize more of the female character. It wouldn't be a terrible idea if you took Nathan Drake and Chloe Fraser, I guess is her name. I don't even know her name. And had them just as the male-female version of all future Uncharted games. Storyline-wise, that may not work, but you should probably just do a soft reboot anyways. But yeah, with this collection, they are definitely trying to make them on equal terms, when I think if there are really any fans of the Uncharted series, they think of it as a Nathan Drake series solely. Plus the movie is around Nathan Drake significantly, so there's that part too. There's, I guess, a lot of question as to whether there ever would be another Nathan Uncharted game. There's a decent chance there would be, but there's a decent chance there also wouldn't be.
All the fluffy hugs. Why, you little.
Let's see. But yeah. It's a 2-game collection, which ignores, I believe, the first 3 Uncharted games, which that trilogy on PC would be much more interesting to me. That being said, it is also worth mentioning that the Uncharted series is not really a series that it's not really a series that I would want to play too much of, because much like the Mass Effect series, regardless of how good or bad the story is, the main gameplay loop is still just running and gunning, and I get a lot of that in better games more focused on running and gunning. Like, I would say I feel like the Uncharted series is on the other side of the scale from like a Halo game and the Mass Effect series too. They're on the opposite side of what you would get from a Halo game, where the story is less of a focus, and you
the time for perennial prayer has come.
You are more focused on just being a good first-person shooter. So yeah, generically speaking, I would pick playing Halo 1 over Uncharted 1 first, all other things being equal. Video Games Chronicle says Grid Legends gameplay reveal and release date announcement is coming Friday, so that's an announcement for an announcement. Nintendo Switch just enjoyed its biggest sales week ever in the UK. PlayStation 5 will be on sale at the Smith's Toys stores in UK on Thursday morning. Video Games Chronicles must be more UK focused than I thought. Let's see. Smash Bros. Ultimate's new update adjusts balancing for the final time. There's a lot of characters here. It'd be kind of hard to go through all of these and pick them all out. It's so much color. But yeah, I mostly recognize all these characters. They really had to dig deep though for some of these characters in particular. But they definitely could have just kept on adding things. I don't know if the fighting style of most characters are particularly that different though. I suspect that the pros play maybe 5 or 6 different characters in Smash Brothers, and that's it. And the rest are all unnecessary extras.
This is how you do fireworks.
I won't miss next time.
Okay.
Let us conclude.
Kaboom! No handiwork needed. Woo!
Okay.
Eternal supplication.
Let's see. PlayStation 5 is in stock at the PlayStation Direct UK. A leaked Battlefield 2042 mission rewards reveal Santa-themed skins and decals, if you're interested in that. I don't think too many people are interested in that because it seems like Battlefield 2042 is already down to like, I think it was rank 13 last I heard on Steam. Very few people playing it and very few people very happy with it. Okay. Well, guess you just have to play this, and then do this, and do this, and then... We got one quick disconnect, and now we've gotten a victory.
I pray that you will be freed from
Unranked.
suffering.
We should just always be playing unranked. One more Havencraft, and then we can just kind of focus on Swordcraft and Shadowcraft, which will be a lot more difficult. I probably should have re-rolled those. Let's see, the new free Epic Game Store titles have been announced. This is Godfall Challenger Edition, which isn't that exactly what they just announced. It's already free on the Epic Store. And Prison Architect will be replacing Dead by Daylight and While True Learn. If anything, the Godfall Challenger Edition being released on the Epic Game Store as a free game probably highlights that the Epic Game Store has fairly now run out of steam as far as giving away free games on a weekly basis and negotiating the contracts to be able to give away free games. It's so much so that they had to come up with this compromised version of the game. Let's see, Video Games Chronicle says The Matrix Awakens, an Unreal Engine 5 experience, is leaked for the PlayStation 5. It's unclear if it's a game or some other kind of media tie-in. I imagine it's a media tie-in. And they don't actually have any videos for it. In a lot of ways, looking at this guy, who was the same actor who played Neo, but seeing what he looks like now compared to what he used to look like is, I think, a problem. He's too old now. They should have replaced him. Like, the Matrix reboot continuation should have just said, hey, all of these people are going to be newer, younger actors taking over the role. It's not insane to potentially have wanted to take the Matrix in the direction of something like James Bond and have a new Matrix movie every couple years with new sets of actors playing the same roles. It's that would have, I think, worked fairly nicely. But also it would have been a big risk at the time, certainly. Because remember, regardless of how successful Matrix 1 was, and even astoundingly successful the Animatrix was, considering the time, once you got to Matrix 2 and Matrix 3, those were very poorly received, and they killed the series for a very long time until we got back to a level of desperation in which any remake is going to get approved just because they have no other ideas. I think it is also fair to say, as an anime fan, from my perspective, The Matrix 1 stole... They admittedly said they stole a lot of influence from Ghost in the Shell, but I think they probably stole a lot of influence from a lot of other anime shows too. And at a certain level, maybe that helped bring a few people to anime, but it really didn't. The Animatrix may have brought a few to anime, but it sure didn't do anywhere as good of a job as, say, Spirited Away, which would have been introducing much better quality anime, adult, kid-friendly anime, Ghibli content to a lot of people. So yeah, if anything, you probably would want to take a step back, and when you see that Sony is promoting a Sony movie, which I think Sony very well, I mean, I don't know, I shouldn't say I think. I wouldn't be surprised if The Matrix is 100% a Sony publication, and so it's Sony Motion Pictures promoting their movie on Sony PlayStation games or demos or whatever it's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if the Uncharted movie is exactly the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we are in a situation where the Sony Motion Pictures in general has no idea and no movies that they can make at all at the moment, so they are intentionally focusing in on video game movies because they're desperate. In a lot of ways, Sony Motion Pictures has failed to do anything with Spider-Man, trying over and over again. It's like 9 Spider-Man movies at this point, I think. And Venom movies, which maybe that would also go into the 9, or maybe that would get it up to 11 as far as trying to have a Marvel Cinematic Universe. If anything, Sony has failed more than Warner Brothers has failed, because at least Warner Brothers has had a success or two in previous Batman series, and at least one of the 3 Suicide Squad movies is decent.
Hey, let's play.
Of course, I could just be I could just be acting negatively or thinking negatively, and maybe Sony is in a much better position than it seems to me.
I'll get it right this time. Stop.
But yeah. If they were really going to do that right, they needed to make, and they need to make, a real Matrix video game. And then the question is, what is a Matrix video game going to be? And do I really want to play a character that looks like John Wick versus the Neo character with the short hair that we saw in the previous? Yeah. In a lot of ways, if they were serious about bringing Neo back as a character, they needed to have that actor cut his hair, and maybe he's just straight up refused to come back and cut his hair. That is a possibility, certainly, but he, in my opinion, needs to look like the old Neo, up to the point of it even feeling like ridiculous and quaint that he potentially has this like old-fashioned awful haircut. And I would say the actor, as an action actor, has not been given enough opportunities to be an action actor compared to the older generations, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, for instance. Like, so either they're not taking as many roles, or they're not being offered as many roles. But yeah, it doesn't feel like they get as many movies as the old action actors used to get.
Now you've done it.
Anyways, back to video game news. Yeah. I have no idea what a Matrix game should be, or what it would look like. Like, in a lot of ways, I wouldn't be surprised if they made something like a Pokemon Go game, where you're in the Matrix and you have an augmented reality challenge to find glitches in the Matrix, and that you've been tricked into working for the robots to maintain the matrix. And so you're fighting like bugs or something, rogue programs. That would make as much sense as anything else. You could have a fighting game theoretically around the Matrix, but then you've made Neo the One so powerful that nothing can stop him. So that doesn't really work as a concept. You probably end up doing something closer to a visual novel where it's just telling story, because as much as the Matrix feels like an action movie, and it is, a lot of story had to be told too. So something with just a lot of cutscenes and a lot of narrative being told to you wouldn't be too out of place. Yeah, a battle royale or something in the Matrix probably would make a lot of sense. People realizing that they're in the Matrix and just shooting each other and killing each other in a battle royale game. That would be a very interesting twist, is that everybody knows they're in the Matrix now in the next movie, and they're just staying there because it's just a fun place to play. That isn't frankly too different from what's happening in the main story of Destiny Child, the lewd mobile phone game I'm playing. They basically have a Matrix going on, and humans and demons are fighting in it for fun. Back to video game news though. EA apparently plans a connected Battlefield universe as it has restructured its development team. The Respawn co-founder Vince Zampella is now overseeing the series. This is, I guess, a follow-up from what had to have been a surprise announcement that the guy that one of the main guys was out of the Battlefield 2442.
How foolish.
Okay, well, we can just play this.
You're in good hands.
And then we can just end there. I think it's probably too little too late though. The game The Ascent has been rated for PS4 and PS5 in Taiwan, according to Video Games Chronicles. Xbox has added 2 new free dynamic backgrounds for Series X and S users. And Paper Mario Nintendo 64 is coming to the Switch online next week, which I guess this is a Nintendo 64 version of Paper Mario, because maybe there was a Game Boy DS version of Paper Mario first, or a Super NES version. I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell. Also, I don't have the blurring effect on, and so I definitely don't want to click play a video on a Nintendo video. I turned off the blurring effect because I was trying to get my program to work and watching some YouTube videos on my computer, whereas mostly I watch YouTube videos on my cell phone. Let's see.
End of the road, eh?
I think you owe me an apology.
Hit that.
You broke the curse?
see. Video Games Chronicles has more of the photos of Steam Deck, which this logo here, the circle and white, really does imply that that is the way the website's going to look in the future. Steam OS or Steam in general is going for this blue and white, which doesn't really look like anything. Doesn't feel like it's spelling something. Like, is the blue supposed to be for Steam and the D here for deck? So it's Steam D, Steam Deck. I mean, that's about as much as I can get from it. Battlefield 2042 is getting a new map called Exposure, if anybody cares. Apple reveals its App Store award winners and 2021's most popular games. Let's look at that more in depth in a second.
This is where I truly shine.
Okay. So let's see. The winners for games are League of Legends Wild Rift, Marvel Future Revolution, Mist from Cyan for the Mac Game of the Year. iPhone was League of Legends, iPad was Marvel Future Revolution. Apple TV is Space Marshals, and Apple Arcade game Fantasian. Now, they are putting these on an equal playing level that they do not deserve to be on. There is significantly more people with iPhones than iPads, than Macs, than Apple TVs, than arcades. If you put this in order, I imagine the number of people with Apple arcades would be the least, followed by probably I would almost say Macs is the second least common, then Apple TV, and then iPads, then iPhones being the most popular one. Then they've got some apps here that I don't recognize, and they're not video games, so I don't really care about them. Then they seem to break this down more between the UK. There's a list of games, which I recognize some of these games. Among Us, Roblox. I don't recognize some of them, like High Heels or Water Sort Puzzle. Nothing here strikes me as particularly surprising that they are on the list. Although Nail Salon 3D, for instance, probably is just on the list as a top free game because it's very clickbaity. They disconnected, but I was about to win anyways.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
There we go. Apparently this just reset. Okay, so now 3 victories between Swordcraft and Shadowcraft. Top paid games: Minecraft, Monopoly, Balloons Tower Defense 6, Plague Inc. Kind of surprising that's a top played game, particularly in the past couple of years we've had. But maybe that did get it some more sales. Plague Inc. is a good game, although maybe not so much on iPhone.
To arms! There's a battle underway!
Clue, I would hope, is better on iPhone than it is on Steam. And iPad games here mostly seem similar. Nothing really surprising here. Didn't realize there was a paid Mario Kart Tour iPad game. Or nope, that's a free iPad game that maybe only works with the Mario Kart remote controlled cars. Minecraft is definitely lining up as far as the best option still for top paid iPads. Paw Patrol apparently still popular. Lego Jurassic World. Wow, can you actually play something that actually is a good Lego game on the iPad? I suspect probably not. Solitaire by Mobilityware for Apple. Well, top arcade games. Then they're starting to talk about apps in general, which, as somebody who doesn't use iPhone stuff, let's see what people actually use. WhatsApp, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. YouTube apparently is called YouTube Watch, Listen, Stream. Microsoft Teams, Snapchat, Facebook, Google Maps, Messenger. You have to straight up install a different messenger to get out of iCloud, I suppose. Let's see. Zoom, Amazon, Gmail. McDonald's UK is pretty popular. And this is UK listings again, I guess, specifically. Which would explain the National Health Service app too, because nobody in the United States would be using the UK's National Health Service app. A lot of these apps I don't even recognize what they do. Yeah. And seeing a list like that, that just kind of reinforces, in my mind, how much work should be put into the idea of having better software, more useful, more recognizable software on iOS and Android. There's just a lot of apps. I have a decent number of apps installed, but a vast majority of them too I could put into deep storage or uninstall them at really no loss to me.
Got me feeling hungry. Give me that.
I definitely feel like in the early days of PC, I installed a lot more programs on Windows compared to the early days of Android. And even now, compared to the early days of Android, I install significantly fewer apps. There's just less passion, less new ideas, less concepts. Maybe it's just me getting old, but it kind of feels like everything has been done, or people just don't care to do the more difficult, the more niche things. It's a little surprising that there isn't just a common, very well known, well used app that will tell you like cooking instructions hands-free, and some of the whole Alexa stuff and all of that should have worked towards something like that happening, and it really didn't.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Are you worth your weight in gold?
Give me that.
Yeah, we
I've lost.
still have yet to have computers that just have natural conversations with you. Moving on, Grid Legends has a release date, gameplay, and new details revealed, according to Video Games Chronicles. And apparently Hazel Light had to abandon a trademark for something called It Takes Two, after Take-Two Take-Two's parent company Rockstar challenged it. Now, which it's not really a phrase that that either of those games really should have a trademark, because it's a common phrase in general, and it would be unfair, frankly, to name your game something called It Takes Two and then stop anybody from having the phrase It Takes Two in their game for decades going further. The easiest way to solve this would have been to just try for a trademark with the artist and developer's name. So if it was not just It Takes Two, but the person's name and It Takes Two,
Beyond my grasp.
that would have worked.
Die, cretin.
I think that's what I'm reading in the story.
The critter worth their salt.
Time to go lickety swift.
It seems like in a lot of ways you can either say Take-Two is either fighting the good fight here or just trying to hurt competition, when really the because they're also contesting a host of other names linked to words like Rockstar, Mafia, and Civilization. And a lawyer has said they're being very, very aggressive in terms of the volume of trademark extensions and challenges it's making, having filed at least 25 in the last 3 months. So, yeah. They may simply be trying to hurt small video game companies trying to trademark things, but always the phrase Rockstar, Mafia, and Civilization, again, far too generic phrases to deserve trademarks around them. And again, it would be easy for them to have just said Take-Two's It Presents It Takes Two, or put the director's name in it.
I shall guide thee to eternity.
I'll train harder.
But yeah, particularly in video games, it's hard to believe that there would be significant market confusion between two AAA games that have the same name and come out significantly far apart from each other. There are a lot of name confusion garbage games on Steam that are actively just trying to create confusion, but people see through that fairly easily and fairly quickly.
2 blades in one go.
A flurry of droplets.
I know when I've lost.
2 blades in one go.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Nano Machina, which we may have talked about this. Looks like it's just kind of an Asteroids clone. $4.99, English only.
The gods have favored me twice.
We have No Plan B, which I think we may have talked about, which looks like nothing. Early access, $13.49, several languages. We have a game called Coworker. Yeah, fairly certain we talked about this. I went back too far. I do it almost every stream now. $7.49, English only. Here we have a game called Dark House. Yep. Take note that very rarely do you see trademarks listed on Steam at all. Which, if people were really serious about maintaining a trademark, they would probably put it after their title every time.
Activate.
This Dark House looks just like an asset flip horror game. $8.99, English and Russian. Of course, they all do claim copyright, and that's a different protection, certainly. The trademark is specifically more for this is the generic branding of which our multitude of products is going to be sold, and that's particularly in video games never applicable. Like when you have a jeans company and they have a trademark for the name of their company, that makes sense. They're going to sell several different makes and models and types of jeans, and they're all going to have those labels. And you're specifically, in the case of a jeans company, selling your product on a level of quality, being manufactured to a certain level of standards, and you don't want people to just make cheap knockoffs and then be able to label it on the same name. Even that argument probably falls apart when you put more time to investigate it, but at least I understand the beginnings there. So I would be fine if Gearbox had a trademark, for instance, of the of their own name, Gearbox. That would make a lot of sense. And of course, Gearbox should have a copyright. If anybody should have a copyright, I would assume, by the current rules, Gearbox should have a copyright on Borderlands. Although actually, it would be, I think, actually EA that owns the copyright on Borderlands, not Gearbox. But for simplicity's sake, we'll say it's Gearbox 100% owns the copyright to Borderlands.
Things up. Too slow.
I like. Give me that.
But I don't know if I specifically would agree that Gearbox should have a trademark for the phrase Borderlands, which is a fairly generic term. And it would make a lot of sense if you were going to tell me there was a Battlefield Borderlands game coming out just called Battlefield Borderlands. And it talked about wars on borders. That seems acceptable. Yeah. In a lot of ways, trademarks, I think, probably should just be merged in the copyrights a little bit better. And if you got rid of all trademark law and merged it in the copyright law, you'd have half as much ridiculous law happening. But there's very rarely a case where laws leave the books or get updated or removed. In a lot of ways, I think governance and law in general needs a revolution every now and then, in which the government collapses and a new constitution is formed and all new law is established and started over from scratch, just to get rid of a lot of the bird law, is what I think they call it, that exists.
Coming at you.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Make the Jump, which looks just like a low-effort platforming game. $2.69, English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Bavity, which looks like nothing of interest. For free, English only. Here we have Rank War Master, which looks like nothing. Early access $20.99, allegedly full audio English. Here we have a game called AutoCube, which looks very much like a low-effort Minecraft clone. Although in all fairness, any Minecraft clone is going to be fairly low effort compared to Minecraft these days. $4.99, allegedly full audio too. Yeah, I seriously doubt there's actual voice acting there. Here we have a game called Feline Sweet, which, again, looks like nothing.
Are you ready for true combat?
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
Let's see. We have Christmas Stories Yeoman Collector's Edition for Big Fish Games, another hidden object game. $12.59, English allegedly full audio.
I'll get it right this time.
We have a game called Tales of Train Spot, which looks like some kind of puzzle train game.
A challenge.
Seems like you're creating train lines in the puzzle form factor, but I don't know what the actual game here is. It seems to be incredibly simplistic. Since this game is just labeled as coming soon, I'm gonna just leave it here. It's English and traditional Chinese, and while it does have a better look because it's 3D models, I can't help but feel like there's a decent chance it's really just a low effort Chinese game. Gamatsu has DNF Duel Grappler trailer, another character. Seems like at this rate we can tell that DNF Duel is going to give a trailer for each character. A lot of trailers today. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Burst Forth. Korrigan Breath has a trailer. And here we can see some anime lewdness with destructible clothing. So I probably don't even want to show that trailer, just in concerns of being YouTube family friendly.
You're through.
Shockingly, it's apparently a shoot 'em up game.
Challenge.
I was not expecting that at all. I feel like the Japanese need to realize that they make too many garbage games. Frankly, if you're making a shoot 'em up game in general, which they make a little too many of those, and then you're having to tie it into an anime, then you have really
Are you ready for true combat?
not put enough
March on.
care and love into your product development.
I'm over here.
And very possibly they don't really care about the anime and besmirching the quality of the anime. So they may very well have just licensed it out to a low effort shoot 'em up game. But yeah. If you are going to make an anime tie-in game, it needs to be a good game. And second part of that is they generally need to stop making these low effort shoot 'em ups or low effort RPG maker games, which we see way too much of. Gamatsu has the Dynasty Warriors 9 Empire's second trailer.
Dimensional startup.
If you're interested in that, check it out.
No smiles.
Demon Gaze Extra has been delayed to January 6, 2022 in the West. This would have been a PS4 and Switch game. Looks like it is a dungeon crawler game. Let's see. Yeah, different art here. Seems to be there's a lot of anime characters. Let's see. Okay. Do this. And then do this.
I shall clear us a path.
We can finally be reunited.
Entering sleep mode.
I'm jumping through the trailer of what it is. Yeah. It is a dungeon crawler game with some monsters that are kind of showing a little bit of cleavage. But the vast majority of the monsters are actually showing are just bug monsters. So you're not even going to see a lot about that. That is certainly one thing that makes Destiny Child as a game with lewd monsters, for lack of a better term. They basically made every single character a lewd anime girl or guy. They have maybe a small handful of other characters, but they very rarely do anything with those other characters.
Remember, every droplet 100 droplets in a single stroke.
So,
Droplets.
like, it's not one of the cases where you have
One step
a
closer
game
to
that
victory.
sometimes teases you with an image, but then that happens once every 20 hours or so. This is much more a case where you are just constantly in Destiny Child seeing a lewd character. Like, you can't go through a single fight without seeing a lewd character either on your team or on the enemy side of the team. And there really is no way you would have a censored version of the game that is still gonna feel appropriate for a lot of parents or a lot of people in general. There we go, we got a
General,
victory.
We destroyed them.
That's nice, we only now need 2 more victories. Let's see. Monster Boy in the Cursed Kingdom is now available for the PS5, which I guess that's news, but it feels barely like news. I'm not sure if we talked about this before. Eve Ghost enemies, first details and screenshots. Here you have a Japanese policewoman on the top of a car and just trying to speed off. I'm fairly certain this is just a visual novel.
There's a battle underway.
Activate. Enhance. Fire.
Xbox achievements for an unannounced Taiko no Tatsujin game have surfaced, which that'd be interesting, certainly, particularly since it's an Xbox achievement list, and decent chance that any game like that would be specifically targeted to the Japanese audience. In general, I would think that the Switch would probably get any kind of drumming Tatsujin no Tatsujin games. I don't know if I just pronounced the name of the game right, not having it directly in my field of view.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
It is questionable how a drumming game would work on an Xbox, though, because I don't think Xbox wants to sell a bunch of accessories, and they don't really have any motion controls or anything, and they don't even have the Kinect anymore, so yeah, I don't know how that would work.
Too slow.
Let's see, Gamatsu has the Famitsu sales updated to show the rest of the games that came out. That's the top 10.
Alas, no smile today.
Let's see. 3 new games this week, and 2 of which I don't recognize. A fairly slow week. Xbox Series X, 435. Xbox Series S, even less, is that finally because PlayStation 5s are now accessible? It does feel like PlayStation 5s were finally available in Japan. Switch numbers still very high. I wonder if the whole Black Friday thing doesn't really affect Japan in the same way or at all. Because you have Switch Lite, Switch OLED model far outpacing the PlayStation 5. Like, just the OLED model is twice as many sales as the PlayStation 5. And if you combine the two, the digital edition into the PlayStation 5, you're still not beating the OLED model. And the 2DS LL is still selling well. PlayStation 4, though, is disappearing quickly from the charts, which again might be more of an indication that they are finally able to get they might finally be able to actually buy PlayStation 5s instead of 4s. Let's see. Kimetsu has the PlayStation Partner Awards for 2021 Japan Asia. The Partner Award and Special Award winners were announced. Let's see. They gave Partner Awards to a bunch of PlayStation games from Square Enix and Bandai Namco. All very big name games.
All of you.
The special award was given to Apex Legends, Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, and Sakuna of Rise and Ruin. All these more Japanese-centric companies, but a big different tier here between being a partner and then getting a special award. Capcom being held to a very basically sent to the kids table here because they didn't have anything to really offer besides Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, with EA, which is a Western company, and Marvelous, which is more of a kind of indie company. It's not really a lot of awards either.
The dawn shines like a beacon of hope.
Like you would expect more than just 6 awards to happen, be given out in any event. .hack/GU Last Recode is coming to Switch on March 10th, 2022. It's currently available for PC and PS4. Bandai Namco is still selling the remake, re-release of .hack games, which really shouldn't be relevant at all by this point.
Coming at you.
Let's see, Atelier Sophia 2, The Alchemist of the Mysterious Dream, has details for Perka, Katrina, and Gnome, detailing more characters. Let's see. Reddit broke this leak for the Matrix Awakens, the Unreal Engine 5 experience, which, in general, if I am going to cover anything on Reddit, which I've talked about Reddit quite a bit, but I don't follow gaming leaks and rumors, which is what it was on. It was r/gaming leaks and rumors. And I don't think I can really block anything on Reddit anyways, because every subreddit has its own custom themes. And so if I was to just start to try to block things, I think I'd quickly find it only works for one subreddit.
March on.
But also I don't use them as a news source. Here is a image, again leaked. Like, this may all be placeholder or fake leaks too. It could be just viral marketing that people are falling into. See, I don't even know what people want from a Matrix movie. Like, finish the fight with the robots and actually defeat the robots. That's about the only thing that could happen, or lose against the robots and in the Matrix and end humanity in general.
I'll get it right this time.
That's kind of all I think you can do.
Now the fight begins.
And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the themes and ideas, or just themes and ideas people took away from the Matrix that weren't even really implied by the Matrix, get spin on. I wouldn't be surprised if the Matrix is just like an incredibly woke, like ridiculous opposite themed story compared to what the original Matrix movies were. Like all the red pill people and the phrasing of red pills in general, I wouldn't be surprised if they started all being like blue pilled, or if the movie tries to push an idea of being blue pilled.
Die, cretin.
And loyalty is ironclad. One step closer to victory. Harder armor, steel yourself. And loyalty is ironclad.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Fantasy Gardens. I feel like I'd seen a game similar to this already. Yeah, it seems too simplistic of an idea, not enough variety for the idea of a simulator or sandbox game where you could have a fantasy garden. $5.99 English and Chinese. So we have a mixed reviewed game called Anvil. With that level of reviews, I can pretty much dismiss it already. 69% popular. Early access, $22.49, several languages. Here we have a game called Tableau Vivient, which looks like a low effort asset flip game. $2.39, allegedly full English audio. Here we have Hidden Histories, The Principality, which again looks like a low effort asset flip game, unless it's supposed to be a hidden object game of a different style, and even at that it still doesn't really look that good. $7.19, English only.
The uncharted desert awaits.
I shall clear us a path.
Okay.
This is our last push. One doesn't have to be. Flank them.
There we go. Here we have a game on Steam called Alien Age, which looks like nothing of interest. A city builder arcade game, it says. $4.49, English only. Here we have Jigsaw Puzzle Dreams, which we're starting to see more of these jigsaw puzzle games where the jigsaw puzzle is not even the focus, and now it's like doing a jigsaw puzzle in a virtual environment, which kind of maybe makes some sense. You have these blank walls, and then apparently you can paint the walls and decorate the walls to your liking.
Booting program.
But the actual
Angelic
gameplay
salvation.
of doing the jigsaw puzzles seems to be barely even being shown. It's free to play, but in reality it's $14.95 with all the DLC to actually unlock puzzles.
This is not a warning. Termination
Here we have the boldly titled game called Buy It Now, which looks like it is just a troll joke platforming parkouring game. $1.89, English, allegedly full audio. You know, frankly, naming your game Buy It Now is, I guess, worth a try if you've got nothing else you can think of to do.
This is where I truly
it's worth an attempt, I would assume. Here we have a game called Survival Maze, which is very generic of a title for a very generic looking game. $3.19, English and Russian. It's a shame. It kind of feels like a game like this could be the beginnings of something, but so often you see these and it's just like pre-bought 3D model, pre-bought trees, pre-bought environment, smacked together with no care or interest, making some very empty, ridiculous game. Here we have Polymemory Cats, which visually looks awful. Looks like it's just a match 2 memory game. $1.19, whole bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Guide and Throw, which looks like just a bunch of neon for $3.99. English only.
No way!
Reborn.
Here we have a game called Virtual Hunter, which there might be something to this. Is this a VR game? Yes, it is. It's early access, $14.99, English, allegedly full audio. I'm going to put this on the follow list. Particularly in VR, hunting maybe makes some sense.
Like a beast from the void.
It almost certainly would be safer.
You're weak. You're weak.
Here we have Maze Art Black, which is garbage. $1.19. Whole bunch of languages, I think. Yes. I suppose I might actually be able to make a different macro. I don't know how it would activate though. Here we have Maze Art Blue, which we can dismiss on the same level. You can see there's a whole bunch of different colored Maze Art games, which are all the same. Maze Art Brown, Maze Art Green, flooding the Steam store. Why does nobody not catch that? Why is there not a limitation on the number of games that a small Steam Direct publisher, self-publisher can publish? Why isn't there a limitation to all publishers, really? Even a big AAA publisher is unlikely to release more than 4 games a month, and yet Steam Direct people can do 4 games in a day? Seems ridiculous. Yeah, if I can think it over and figure out a way to trigger a macro to run, I probably could grab the price and the language and the single player aspect here. Grab all that information through a macro, and then edit the HTML on the page up here at the top. If I could do that, then that would be really nice, because then we could eliminate scrolling pretty much completely. We could just have everything here at the top. We could look at the screenshots and then be done with it. This No Rage Quit Dude as a game looks uninteresting, by the way. But it would definitely be a case of how do I get it to trigger consistently and immediately. Because I basically need it to run on every page that loads on Steam. Here we have a game called Vantage Primitive Survival Game, which looks like nothing. $11.99, English only. Here we have a game called Cubesticle, which looks like nothing. $1.79, English, Portuguese, Brazil. Here we have a game called Mugen Journey, which I've heard the phrase Mugen before. I don't know what it really means, though, if it's some kind of mech thing or not. But yeah, that looks uninteresting. Here we have a game called Rubber Bandits, which again looks like it's probably a player versus player beat 'em up game. I couldn't cover even if it did interest me. $17.99 online PvP. Yeah, it is rated very positively, so it's worth mentioning that.
Ladies and gentle ghosts, follow me.
Let's see. Gamatsu has Tribes of Midgar Season 2 Serpent Saga launching December 14th.
I love this stuff. Of course
I'm
I
not
do.
sure I particularly care about Tribes of Midgard, but or at least right now I don't care about it. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe Edition has been delayed to early 2022, which I think this is like the second or third time it's been delayed. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually is just a joke and is always going to be delayed. There's also, I think, just some weirdness with owning multiple copies of the Stanley Parable in general.
Did I want gold again?
Like different versions of that game. It being a avant-garde art piece more than a video game, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have bought the original version of the game and then played it through to see all the different endings, and then bought, I think, a remaster was released of the game, and now they have this ultra deluxe version potentially as the third release of the game.
I want to get it all back.
I think it's the third release of the game. It might be the fourth, actually.
I feel the emptiness.
All of you.
You need more energy.
I put a slip cover over this new recliner chair that I finally installed in front of me to sit down on, and it's a fabric slip cover because the recliner chair had that fake leather on it, and it was immediately cracking and falling apart. And this is better, but it is weirdly textured, and it does come off as a little hot, where the leather seemed to kind of cool a little bit more. So, but I'm sure I'll get used to it fairly quickly and then forget about it. What do I want to do? I think you want to do
Do
this.
not seek what is not there.
Someone call tech support.
Moving on, Moss Book 2 launches in the spring of 2022. This is one of several mouse games that came out somewhat close to each other. I think Moss was the one specifically, though, where you could only really play it in PlayStation VR. So this doesn't feel like that's the case now, but that might very well create a weird situation where a significant number of people who might want to play Moss Book 2 won't play it because they didn't play Moss Book 1, or first Moss game. We already talked about this. Nintendo 64 Switch Online adds Paper Mario on December 10th. Dusk Diver 2 Yumo and Leo character skills trailers are available. What is Dusk Diver? It's a beat 'em up action RPG. Okay. The problem with this in general, and I'm not going to say it's specifically a problem here, this might work fairly well, the problem though in general with JRPGs and action JRPGs is that they may be getting the wrong message or having the wrong focus and just making things look really cool while not really addressing the core problem, which is that they are too grindy and long animation and attack animations doesn't fix the problem of games being too long or too grindy. Even if they are faster animations, a fast kick then followed by 10 extra seconds of explosions and just makes it 10 more seconds longer. Metal Dogs for PS4 and Switch launches on April 8th in Japan. This almost feels like this is a Metal Gear Solid parody, which it may very well be. But it's not made by anybody who worked on Metal Gear Solid. So it might be more of a just joke in that it's a dog with a tank turret on its back. There we had a slight disconnect issue. I don't know what really causes these, particularly in-game disconnections. You'd have to know specifically what protocol is being used to connect to these things, whether it's TCP, UDP, whether they're sending HTML signals or WebSocket signals or something else. Something completely proprietary. I did see a video talking about the ESP Now protocol that ESP 8266 and ESP 32 variants of
This one's for my family.
chips use. It's a proprietary wireless mesh network protocol, but one of the things it does is it gets rid of the OSI model and takes it from an 8-level model and brings it down to a 3-level model, just completely optimizing to get rid of a lot of unnecessary things for these low power devices that don't need those extra levels. And arguably, I think I said it just a few days ago, I think looking at the internet from an OSI model is stupid and needs to be changed, and we probably could get it down to something like a 3-level model like ESP Now uses. Unfortunately, ESP Now really only works for those two chips and is proprietary, and so you've got to convince people to learn how to program things new on embedded embedded devices.
Did I want gold again?
And for every advantage it has, you have to set up a lot of programming to make it work. If it became an open source, that would be a lot nicer. Or an open standard.
Literally.
I want to get it all back.
Let's see. Komatsu also has the Grand Award winners for the PlayStation Partner Awards, Japan and Asia. They gave eFootball PES from Konami an award, Genshin Impact an award, and Resident Evil Village an award. Which those are very different games. And kind of ridiculous that you'd have multiple articles just talking about such a few number of winners. Like, it definitely feels like very few people were even up for consideration.
What? Did I want gold again?
Okay.
I want to get it all back.
This one,
I just want to fill the emptiness.
and then do this.
Are you in need of medicine? Open
And
wide.
hit that.
Aren't you muscular?
Weird feeling.
We've hit a point also
Wonderfully cruel
where everything is just kind of hitting an anniversary. So Jack and Daxter, for instance, the Precursor Legacy is 20 years old today, according to PlayStation. GameDeveloper.com has wrapped up its acquisition of Weta Digital, which apparently worked on Indie Game and Battle Angel Alita and the Umbrella Academy Netflix series from those pictures. One assumes they would actually show accurate pictures.
Prepare yourself.
Well, that's too bad.
Gamatsu says Scarf launches December 23rd, which this video's not available. Fair enough. See, GameDeveloper.com says Qualcomm's latest dev kit is designed to tear down platform barriers, going from the idea that their chip is now going to try and focus on making video game handhelds. I still feel like screens really should be at the top, not in the center. Just because Nintendo is doing it like that doesn't mean that's right.
Does this outfit make me look too old?
At a certain level, I guess
You see?
you have a saturation level as far as cell phones, and cell phones being cell phones has lost its logic in a lot of ways. Very few people are making phone calls on a cell phone anyway, so it probably should be a device that evolves into something better. I don't know how many people are actually gaming on cell phones though, or portable devices that aren't the Switch.
Demands it.
Maybe the Steam Deck
It won't be long
in the
now.
future. And a dev kit definitely would be a ridiculous device that just has as many buttons as you could possibly cram on it. So it makes a lot of sense to release this,
Nice sword.
even if we never see any in the device that approaches this. Seems like there's a camera here. Seems like it's going for very much an Xbox outlet with the colored buttons even from the Xbox. Triggers and bumps. You do have to ask a question though, as far as how many adults would give up the ability to put this in a pocket, which is what people still kind of want to be able to do. You put it in a case or a pocket. This is not really fitting in a reasonable case or pocket. In favor of having buttons. How many parents would give a kid a cell phone if it just looks like a toy compared to giving a cell phone for safety reasons or however they justify it? Like, how many schools would tolerate cell phones even less if they look like video game consoles? I'm not sure that this is the future of cell phones. In general, we've been seeing cell phones that fold in half be the next big ridiculous stunt. And
There's a battle
we've
underway.
consistently seen cell phones get smaller and smaller. So the idea of making them bigger in a game console is going in an opposite direction. And I'm definitely looking at this from the perspective of Qualcomm makes cell phone chips, and in a lot of ways they kind of only make cell phone chips for the United States cell phones more than anything. with the like Snapdragon processors. A lot of other countries have different frequencies on the cell phone
Let's speed things
frequencies, and
up. Too slow.
different chip manufacturers are making those chips. But it hopefully will inspire some people to make some new developments or think about making better games. It is just a catch-22. There are no good games on cell phones,
Too
thus
slow.
nobody makes good gaming cell phones hardware, and because nobody makes good gaming hardware, there are no good games on cell phones.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says the Jingle Jam charity bundle has raised over $1 million. This is that Yogscast Humble Bundle. I have consistently stayed away from looking at any Humble Bundles now for probably 4 or 5 months, and it has not been a loss at all, really.
He's feeling
I
hungry.
probably should
Too
have
slow.
stopped looking at Humble Bundles 6 months earlier than I did. This is a kind of shockingly high number. 20% of Xbox Cloud gaming players exclusively use touch controls, which, alright, I mean, that's not really saying much though, because the number of people playing on Xbox Cloud could be incredibly small, and you probably would exclusively use touch controls, because if you're a cheap gamer, you're not going to turn around and then spend money to buy a Bluetooth controller to connect to your cell phone to play.
Return light to the
At
canals.
your service.
The uncharted desert
Play
awaits.
Xbox Cloud games. I think we already talked about this. Vince Zampella is now head of Battlefield. The DICE GM, Oscar Gabrielson, is also leaving the company. Again, very small subtitle text here. So yeah. Definitely doesn't feel like Battlefield's doing well. And this is self-aggrandizing post from GameDeveloper.com that the Game Developer Conference of 2020 is promoting itself. So I guess check that out if you want to be a conference associate, which is, in my suspicion, a very low paid or free position
Best of luck to you.
to potentially get free entrance to GDC, which maybe if you're a young new game developer that can't afford the probably way overpriced tickets, it might be worth it to become an associate. I assume that's what associate means, and it doesn't mean
Best of luck to you.
you're renting out a booth or anything like that. It could mean that too. Here we have Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball 2022, which is obviously just a simulation sports game of no interest. $31.49, English only. Here we have a game called Prototype Blocks, which looks like it's half Portal and half Boom Blocks. Either way, it doesn't look polished enough to interest me either way. $6.59 English and Russian. Here we have a game called Merakek, which looks like a garbage asset flip shooter. Free, English only. I did look at the Smooth Scroll plugin. It says it's working, but I didn't change any of the settings. Here we have Fairy's Bargain, the old-fashioned way to spell fairy. The Price of Business, which is a text-based game, so it doesn't interest me. $3.95, English only. Let's see, we really just have games left to cover today, and I would like to end things fairly quickly. Also, normally I would leave these games for Monday, but it might not be a bad idea to not do that in this
The
instance.
dawn shines like a beacon of hope.
One step closer.
We may just go through all the games today and leave some safety going forward. We could do a fall list cleanup on Monday if we run out of stuff to do instead. Here we have a game called Century Age of Ashes, which there might be something here. I'm always looking for a dragon game where you play as a dragon or control dragons that's actually good. You can see this is mostly positive. It's free to play with a whole bunch of DLC. Unfortunately, it's online PvP. Yeah, that's a problem. Here we have a game called Lenny Boog, which looks like some kind of creepypasta from the internet. $4.49, whole bunch of languages. I wonder if a lot of this is coming from people making video games first, or people making creepypastas on the internet, or fan art or something like that first.
Time to retreat. Time to retreat.
I was involved, I could have just played this.
Remember, every droplet, 100 droplets in a single stroke. A flurry of droplets. Done and done.
Let's see, here we have a game called Primateer. Prime E-Tier.
You want to hear about my coil?
So, almost like it's supposed to be Privateer. Looks like it's just a
Time to retreat.
low effort survival game. Early access VR. Interesting. That's VR. Doesn't look like a VR game. English and Japanese, 1999. I definitely should think about not making a program to change these pages until I get the scheduling program working. Get one thing done first. Let's see.
A flurry of droplets. A flurry of droplets. Oh, crud, I fried them! A flurry of droplets.
This town is good
But
folk.
yeah.
This town is good folk for
If I can get the program to save me more time in general, I definitely need that. Less time live streaming these videos, more time recording pre-recorded footage would be I'd be very happy with that. We have a game called Suspect Enemy, which is just an Among Us clone. Doesn't look terrible for an Among Us clone, but in general I don't think Among Us is that good of a game. So making a clone of a game I don't think is that good doesn't really help anything. Plus it's online PvP anyways, so I can't really cover it. $5.99, whole bunch of languages. We are, I think, also
General, we
done
destroyed them.
with all the daily quests. We got lucky. So yeah, either I choose to play the single player, which I don't think I want to do, or I just play ranked. We have something called Ice Station Z, an open world zombie survival in a snow environment, which I feel like zombies would either freeze or just stand out quite a bit in a white environment. If you were going to put zombies in a snow environment, you basically need to make them translucent, where they're basically invisible, or capable of swimming in snow or something like that. $4.99, several languages. I don't think there's enough of a game here. It says it has single player, but if it was actually going to work, I think it would have to be more of a multiplayer game. There was a sci-fi channel series it went for a while with zombies being experimented on in Ice Station. Or Snowy Place. But it kind of went off the rails as a series too. I guess we have an arena run we should do. Alright, what do we want to play? Yeah, Ramp, Dragoncraft, why not? Here we have a game on Steam called Castle on the Coast. Which looks like it might be a kid-friendly game worth playing. I'm not sure. Yeah. This could just be bad animation or slightly bad animation with maybe decent gameplay. Definitely looks like it's trying for kids, though. So I'm willing to give this a follow. We haven't put a lot of games on the follow list today. 1349, several languages. This could also just be a low-effort Russian or Chinese or German or French game, too.
Bow before Dark Dragoon, ruler of the skies.
Here we have a game called Across the Galaxy Stellar Dominator, which looks like it's a side-scrolling shooter game with a lot of other sim elements to it. Looks like it's probably a Chinese game. $8.99 English and Chinese, yeah. Feels like it's all over the place, which we do see sometimes with Chinese games in particular, is that they just don't know how to be an average game or what they want to be. Here we have a game called Desktop Monkey, which I'm not sure is even actually a game.
Punishment awaits.
Regardless if it is or not, it doesn't look particularly interesting. Early access, $3.19. Whole bunch of languages. And yeah, my back hasn't spasmed, my eyes haven't hurt. I may very well have just done the thing that needed to happen, which was I just needed to rest for an entire week, and frankly I need to do that more often, particularly as I'm getting older, and need to just take it easier, relax, know my limitations, which are ever decreasing or ever increasing limitations, I suppose. Here we have a game called Examination Chambers, which looks like it's a low-effort puzzle game. Doesn't look that interesting. $1.49 English only. What's funny about that is a game like that is basically what Portal 1 was, but Portal 1 had the benefit of looking way better. Yeah.
Did someone see me?
Here we have a game called Abby and the Soul, which is tagged as a puzzle platformer.
What is not there?
She looks like one of the characters from one of those Pixar movies. And the animation doesn't look terrible here in this cutscene, but every screenshot makes it look kind of bad, and I don't know if there really is a game here. There's definitely a problem with when you're controlling a character that is just this young. Like, at a certain level, if you're going to have characters that young, you basically have to then enter a almost Muppet Babies world where reality is not really reality, and they're really maybe perceived threats, but to the actual player it's obvious there aren't actually any threats, or there's just no violence at all. So yeah, I suspect PG Entertainment is trying for PG Entertainment. This is $2.99. I'm gonna put this on the follow list. PG is Entertainment, a terrible name considering how PG doesn't mean anything on the ESRB ratings. There is no PG in video games. So I'm gonna put this on the follow list, but I'm really gonna have to see some reviews to believe it, there's an actual game there. Here we have a game called Mecha Jammer, which is already mixed, and because of that I think I can dismiss it. Doesn't look terrible, but 50% positive, 51% positive. 22.49 English only. Like, theoretically, if I could pull all of the things, yeah, if I could pull all of the information out of the web pages and move things around, it's only the next step to potentially
Fitting end.
to potentially calculate like the number of reviews and just have a thumbs up, thumbs down indicator
Victory is a testament
as far as
to
whether
our strength.
game has a high chance of me saying yes or no to it. Like, for instance, High Rise Mogul here, with its 70% positive, that could be a thumbs up indicator, unless we see the price is like over $20, or we see it's not a single player game, or we see that it doesn't support English. Any of those would be thumbs down vetoers. Of course, that'd be a lot of programming for having a computer give you an indication on what decision you're going to make when you still have to make the decision. As for this actual game, High Rise Mogul, that's going to be a no. And at a certain level, it doesn't matter if the computer can calculate what I would say. I need these games to be in my head to a certain level, so I understand the general state of the video game Steam storefront and games coming out, and whether or not I've heard of these games before or not. This game, Archvale, is rated very positively as a bullet hell action RPG. It's a humble bundle game. Spoke too soon. My eye is now starting to hurt. Took longer.
Activate.
It is very
Enhance.
possibly just strained, though. $14.99, whole bunch of languages. I'll put it on the follow list and think about it. Here we have a game called Fire in the Beastlands, which looks like an old game, but I don't think it actually is. Feels like there's too much going on here. Fighting animals on a 2D platformer seems kind of weird. Now you're on these platforms, you're running around, you're running generally the wrong way. Then you run into a big dragon that you're targeting different parts of his body. Feels like they're trying to do something here, but it feels kind of janky. They're calling it a Souls-like Metroidvania, and I think just because I use the phrase Souls-like, I'm gonna have to say no to it. Yeah. Because, yeah, I don't want that. Really don't want that. It is a kind of uniquely different art style, I will say, and I'm always looking for different art styles. But not at the expense of my sanity by playing a mediocre game. Here we have a game called World Box God Simulator. I don't know if I really want to play any God Simulators. This one doesn't. I don't know if it's really what I'd want to do. Apparently you create and destroy your world using giant crabs and other things. It's rated very positively, early access $19.99, several languages. No, I just don't see anything here though that interests me, so I'm gonna say no to that. There's just a lot of styles of games I don't have any interest in. Here we have something called Ultimate Tag, which is probably nothing. It's probably player versus player focused. Early access, free-to-play online PvP, so that's going to be a no. English only. Here we have Holy Cow Milking Simulator, which is tagged as a bullet hell shoot 'em up. And I think shoot 'em up is actually the wrong phrase. Up-down twin stick shooter by the looks of it. Feels too much like a joke game. $8.49, several languages. I'm gonna have to say no to that too.
Worship the primal flame.
Let's see. Here we have a game called Starbase Gunship, which I'm never interested in Starbase games or space games. This looks like a mobile port. $8.49, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Tea Time, which looks like a very low effort game. $2.99, English and Spanish Latin America. Terrible animation too. Miss paint level graphics.
Did someone see me?
Here we have a game called Baby Quick Adventure of the Moon Dragon, which is too long of a title.
It's time you got a taste of your own despair.
I don't want to dismiss this immediately though, even though I probably should. Let's put down the follow list. $3.99, third party URL. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Dead Transmission. Dead Space 3 is airing on my channel right now. I hope I scheduled all of that. I think I did. Late to the party by far as October timeline in which that was supposed to come out, but I had already scheduled a bunch of things. Dead Transmission looks like nothing. Online co-op, English only.
I'll head the vanguard.
Clash.
There's a lot more where that came from. I've been keeping this. I'll blast my way through.
Here we have a game called Rakuten, which isn't that the name of a website? Looks just like an Asteroids clone. $9.99, English only. And I have a whole bunch of these. Here we have a game called Bistro Days, which I don't think we're gonna get any like nudity adult games this Friday. Probably next Friday. Bistro Days here looks like it might have a lewd patch, but I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. Bosom close-ups, no nudity, and revealing clothes is all they're claiming it's gonna have as a visual novel dating sim comedy. So coming soon and unlikely to actually make it to the wish list. Here we have a game called A Visit to Friends, which is just black and white pixels. In fairness, when you're moving, black and white pixels as an art style is not as bad as it looks in still form, but it still feels very much like it's not much of a game. Not worth $2.99. English, allegedly full audio. It's being compared to Minute, which if you look at Minute screenshots, there's a lot more shadowing and a lot more resolution there than what you're seeing here. And frankly, I didn't even really like Minute, and Minute would have been better, definitely, had it not been in the format of black and white.
Ready to witness my true strength?
Right, so you hit this,
Hope won't be extinguished so easily.
and I still lose. Here we have a game on Steam called Elfin Clay, which looks like nothing. $15.29 English, Japanese.
This victory is a testament to your strength.
Apparently it's focused on online PvP. Collaborative battle game in which these made of magic clay. I have no idea what it is, but it's an online game, so we'll ignore it. Here we have Justice Chronicles, which just looks like an RPG game. I wouldn't particularly call it an RPG Maker game, but it might actually be RPG Maker MX. But it's from basically an unknown developer, unnamed publisher, not even, which is assuming a falsity that there is a known name as far as good RPG games, RPG Maker games. $13.49 English and Japanese. I think we'll skip this. I also want to just wrap up this tournament run, which has 3 more games, and then be done even if there are some games left. Or wrap up the games and maybe just leave the tournament run to play off screen. In general, I want to wrap something up because I'm getting a little tired. Here we have a game called Pretty Girls Rivers from Zoo Corporation, the maker of the Pretty Girls series. I don't know what Rivers is. It kind of feels like it's a mahjong version of
Mother, father,
So-
come on.
like mahjong solitaire with maybe some extra limitations to it. And then they just have kind of the same anime girls that they really don't even get naked in most of the games. They just get in more revealing clothing. $3.99. It would be better if they did get naked, frankly. English, Japanese, and Chinese. Let's see. Sexual content in general. Mature content, no indication though of nudity or anything like that. And this is the Sin Show version, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's another version that was going to be released fairly quickly. Here we have one that's all Asian characters. Apparently it's called Super Adventure, and looks just like an asset flip game. Early access, $1.19 English and Chinese. Here we have a game called Dawn of War, which looks like a Chinese MOBA being ported from a cell phone game. I've heard of a game called Dawn of War, but I don't know if this is the game people are talking about. Free to play with in-app purchases. English, Thai, and Chinese. One of the things I would say, if you're going to make an adult game with like solitaire and the characters get in more lewd clothing, why do it with mahjong in particular? Why not just make strip solitaire with cards? Wouldn't you get a much bigger audience? Maybe, maybe not. I would think you'd get a bigger audience though, making solitaire games. If I think about like Regency Solitaire and Shadowhand, if those games had been rewarding me with lewd images of female characters, that might have taken some of the edge off the ridiculous number of solitaire games I ended up having to play. Because particularly in Shadowhand, there was a lot of extra gameplay and solitaire gameplay that felt unnecessary.
Suits down to your soul.
But then again, I imagine solitaire fans probably would love something like Shadowhand. Here we have a game called Mirror Party, which looks like it's probably a player versus player Mario Party game with more of a Chinese influence. It's rated mostly positive. Early access, $1.19, Japanese, allegedly full Japanese audio, and several other languages supported. We have Fruit Ninja VR2, which I think, just for the name recognition, deserves to be on the following list as a VR game. Early access, $19.99, English only. I feel like Fruit Ninja 2, without the VR in the title, has been out for a very long time, and they're late to the party.
There's a lot more where that came from.
Wait, what's this?
Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Delayed Sun, which looks like it's an open world
May happiness
zombie
be with
shooter.
you.
Early access, single player only, $4.99. Allegedly full audio.
Lots of bones.
Do I think there's a chance of a good game here?
Lots of things I do.
I'd say no. There's some artwork and art stuff and 3D models that look very asset flip,
There's no
and
retreat.
they're just not really showing anything in the screenshots to make me believe it's anything other than an asset flip zombie shooter. Here we have a game called Big Larry, which looks like it's yet another horror game. They're getting away from being specifically Five Nights at Freddy's games, and now we're starting to see other clones of Five Nights at Freddy's games come out.
I'll scorch you as black as these skies.
Ready to witness my true strength?
You want the world?
Let's see if this works.
You're mean.
Here we have a game called Crazy Athletics, Summer Sports and Games,
Welcome back to the land of the living.
which
May happiness be with you.
it's a rhythm game.
Step back. New arrival incoming.
I don't know if I really want to play a rhythm game.
Get it. I'm done.
Looks like it might very well be a cell phone port or a PlayStation port. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's a musical rhythm game, and yet the depiction is these crazy athletics. I kind of want to see the reviews on this, even though it's not likely a game I'd ever play. You can get the soundtrack for free. Do you have to buy the game to get the soundtrack, though, I wonder? $16.99. Whole bunch of languages. I think you probably do have to buy the games to get any part of DLC.
You have angered me.
I can see the beginning and the end here, so we may get through all of this. All these games. Here we have Color by Number Monster House Heroes, which we can immediately dismiss. $1.49 English only. Here we have a game called Dice vs. Dice, which doesn't look like anything of interest. English. Here we have Race on Ice 2020 Pro, which we can dismiss. It looks like garbage. $4.99. Here we have a game called Vampire Combat, which doesn't look great. Just even in the thumbnail, it really doesn't look that good. $2.99 English only. At a certain level, vampires punching and kicking each other in a fighting game doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just not what I would expect. It's not how I'd expect vampires to fight. I'd expect them to move really fast and bite and claw at each other, more like animals. So I'm saying no to that. Here we have a game called Lost Find, which is tagged as not safe for work and having sexual content in it, which is shocking to me because it really looks like it is just a puzzle game. Wow, these screenshots are just all over the place. Very popularly English, Chinese, and Japanese for $3.59. Turn-based casual game. Players attack and restore blood volume according to the values of a sieve and pass the level by defeating the boss.
You're too strong.
Let me just look at this trailer.
Victory is exhilarating!
Yeah, it seems like there's a boss fight mechanic, and then there's a kind of platforming mechanic where you jump around the laser beams. But looking at 2 or 3 different game mechanics here, they all look awful. So I'm gonna have to say no to Lost Find. And I'm not really seeing anything that indicates me that you actually will see a lot of nude or lewd imagery. Here we have a game called Auction, which looks like it's probably a horror asset flip game. 4-player co-op game. Escape the building. $4.99 English, allegedly full audio.
Ruler of the skies!
Here we have another maze art game we can immediately dismiss. Legend of Egypt, Jewels of the Gods 2. It's just a match 3 game. $9.99 English, and what language was that? German full audio. Here we have a game called Christmas Horror, which you're shooting Santa, which, I mean, at the very least you could be playing as Santa shooting Krampus or evil elves or something. Whatever. I'm not gonna limit somebody's expression. Here we have a game called Project Unira, which is tagged as a puzzle game. It, to me, feels like it's either a tech demo or an asset flip game. Playing as a robot doesn't bother me completely, but this trailer is not really showing me any interesting gameplay. $8.99 English only. Here we have a game called Circus Pocus, which there might be something to this. It's kind of puzzle placement game. Kind of a hack and slash top-down twin-stick shooter game, but you're not actually shooting. I question if there's a lot of game here, or if it's actually fairly little. I guess I'll give it a chance though and put this on the fall list. $3.49 English, Russian, Chinese. That probably means it's garbage. Here we have a game called Dragon Slaying, which looks like it has nudity, but it's not tagged as having any of that. Definitely some lewd imagery. So I guess I was wrong. We did get some lewd games. $1.39. Several languages. It says it has sexual content, but not nudity. but I don't know how well these are actually regulated in the first part. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody puts, if a lot of games say sexual content and actually have nudity in them and they just don't mention
I'm
it.
not lonely. Not with everyone around
Here we
me.
have a game called The Clockworker, which looks like it's probably just an RPG.
Glad you're here.
I'm suspecting either low effort Japanese or Chinese game. $1.99 Korean. No, I was wrong. Korean, I still haven't gotten a good grasp on as far as our differences in animation style. Here we have a game called Kingdom Traveler, which is apparently a survival exploration game. Not really seeing anything of interest. Early access, $6.39, English, Chinese, and Japanese. Here we have a game called Heim, H-E-I-M. It's just supposed to be a puzzle adventure game. I feel like this very well may be the third game that tricks me to putting it into the follow list, because it looks like it might actually be a decent kids game when odds are very low that it actually is. But I have to err on the side of it actually being a good game. $19.99 English only.
Welcome back to the land of the
Here we have a game called
But make it fast.
Carrot, which looks like a very weirdly animated visual novel. Almost like a point and click adventure game. It's only 20 minutes long though. So yeah, this is a very odd art style. 20 minutes though for $4.49 is an incredibly hard argument. Hard sell. I'm gonna put this on the follow list just to see if people review it, but yeah, that is not enough game to meet with people's standards. At least get up to 2 hours, like everybody else. Alright, well, I'm gonna do this, I guess.
Raging flames have got your back.
So we can hit that
Won't
one,
do a thing.
and that one, and that one. Here we have a game that's all in Asian characters, which looks like it's probably a Chinese visual novel. They're calling it a medical sim and tagging it with educational, which there is maybe an idea here. It's Japanese, not Chinese actually. $9.99. Might be an idea to going through charts and playing a game where you're looking through patients' charts and acting as a doctor or something. I could see particularly people in medical school playing a game like that, but you'd have to be something like Papers, Please, or Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, where the challenge is reading the charts accurately, correctly, to know what to do. And that may not be particularly fun for most people. Here we have a game called Magdaril Mystery, which I think is probably just a horror asset flip game, particularly looking at this garbage thumbnail. $2.79 English and Romanian.
You're a fiery one.
I'm gonna say no to that. Here we have a game called Loose Poo, I assume is the name of it. It's spelled P-O.
Are you in need of medicine?
Welcome back.
Top-down
to the
twin
land
stick
of the
shooter
living.
garbage game from the looks of it. $1.59 English and Chinese. It's being compared to Binding of Isaac, but just on the scale of the enemies and the scales of the room, you can tell it's not going to play anywhere as good as Binding of Isaac does. Let's see.
I'll hit the vanguard.
More where that came
Let's
from.
see. Here.
I've been keeping this in reserve. I'll
Go ahead,
blast
flash
my way
with that.
through.
With that. And do that.
You don't know when to quit.
We have a game here called My Universe Interior Designer, which looks like a YouTuber's life clone. Definitely doesn't look like an actual game as far as interior designing, as far as one that's good. The problem with any kind of decorating designing thing is you've got to have a whole bunch of models, and you can see here there's basically only 3 models available. $24.99, whole bunch of languages. IKEA and companies like that need to get together and make their own collection of models and their own software, and I think IKEA kind of does have a software like that that's not a video game, but maybe they should make it a video game also. Amazon.com does have a system in which you can augment reality and display furniture on a camera through augmented reality in your house.
Pay thy reverence. Heaven demands it.
Ready to witness my true strength?
But yeah,
Divine judgment awaits.
I don't think you can use it for all things on Amazon.com. It's just like furniture in particular. And that is the one thing I run into, particularly when I'm buying anything on Amazon or anywhere online, is things are just not in scale. You trying to look at one thing versus the other. Nobody puts a ruler next to anything, so you don't know if it's bigger than you think or smaller than you think, and sometimes they'll tell you the size, and then you have to pull out measuring tape and just like visualize it from that, and that should be fairly accurate, but even at that point it's a hassle and hard to do accurately, in particular if you're trying to get something to fit within within less than an inch of space. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Mason and Strings, which
I have done the gods' bidding.
there might be something to this. I kind of like this art style. It's different, and it feels kind of nicely done. Feels like one of those Nickelodeon art styles of yesteryear, which I don't know if those were ever particularly good, but they're different. I got really lucky there. Hey, I got a reward too.
Victory is exhilarating.
I don't know what I did to earn that reward. I guess it was the battle pass going forward. I'm gonna seriously get into like Group A. Nope, I would have needed 4 wins. Well, still a better reward than normal. So Mason and Strings is free to play, but I'm going to put it on the fall list just to see if there's any reviews there. English only. It's unlikely somebody would review a free game. Here we have a game called Miasma 2, Freedom Uprising, which looks like nothing of interest. $2.24, English only. Here we have a game called No Crooks on Christmas, which looks like garbage. Tower defense game. Free, English only.
I hope you're ready to escort me.
We have a game called Hearts of the Dungeon List, which, wow, seems like it's a badly animated dungeon crawler game with some girls to try and catch our attention, but they're animated so poorly. I mean, I think the number of people interested in pixely retro girls is probably very, very low. $11.69 English only. That's also way too expensive. We have about 10 more tabs here. Here we have a game called Yui Tui, which looks like it's just a platforming game of no interest. It's zoomed out maybe a little too much. The enemies are too big, the coins are too big. Yeah, scale just feels wrong. 59 cents English only. Here we have a game called Paper Bride, which looks like it might be a horror kind of point and click. At least that's what I'm kind of taking it as, maybe more of a horror hidden object game. There might be something to this. We'll look for reviews. $7.19, full Chinese and several other languages on top of that. We'll see about reviews. There could be something here, but also very possibly it could be nothing. Here we have a game called Who is the Criminal, which looks like a visual novel. It looks like it might be a Chinese only one. $7.99. Chinese only, yeah. This girl has a double star on her chest. Star of David, or interlocking star. I think if it's interlocking, that's probably the Star of David more than anything. Maybe that means something in Chinese culture that's different, but maybe it doesn't.
Did someone see me?
Trying to watch the trailer here on this game to see if there's any more indication on what the game is.
Show me the limits of your will.
Not really. I have to wonder if they think the star that they put there is just supposed to be like a police badge of some sort. But it doesn't really seem like that way to a Westerner.
That was almost amusing.
Anyways, moving on, we have a game called The Divine Deception, which looks like it's a garbage visual novel collection of a few mini games. $13.49, English only. I think we can say no to that. We have a game called Gardenia, which looks like it's a gardening survival game with maybe some comedy around it. I might want to give this a chance. $9.89, several languages. We'll give this a follow. I probably will say no to it, but I'll give it a try. So.
Oh, lamentable fate.
Wow, we got another quick disconnect. We got a decent number of quick disconnects today, which is great. So maybe I've finally turned my luck around. That puts us at receiving a fairly nice reward, which we don't get that very often. It'd be crazy if this gave us like a really, really high number of packs or something. Like basically it gave us 170 gold worth of reward, which is not terrible, but Had they given us premium currency, which we've never had a single premium currency at all, that would have been nice. Or had it given us 100 packs, that would have been nice too. We have a decent amount of gold for whenever the next big expansion happens, if I'm even playing this game still by the time the next big expansion happens. Alright, well then I'll leave the remaining few games, there's about 6, for Monday. I do want to talk about this. GameDeveloper.com talked about an interview with Tammy Borwick, who worked on Monkey Island 2 and Freddy Fish, which apparently Freddy Fish is a girl because she specifically changed Freddy Fish to be a girl in the second game and say it. And they talked about this interview, but then they linked to the actual interview, which is much longer and much more in depth. This is from lucasdelirium.it, so an Italian website. It's in English. And it's a fairly interesting read. Apparently Scum U, which was, I thought was some weird just way of describing the Scum engine, is actually what they called being taught how to use the Scum engine by the people who originally made the Scum engine. So Scum University, Ron Gilbert taught you how to use the engine. So yeah, it's an interesting article. I'd say check it out if you're interested. Now I'm just gonna go through my 4 or 5 tabs. Let's see what new news has happened in the last 3 hours and 30 minutes. And then we'll call it a stream. Over the weekend, I don't expect to accomplish much. My eye is still hurting a little bit, but it took longer to start hurting. So, more resting. In all fairness, it could be another week or 2 in which I'm barely doing anything or am doing very little. With the fact that Twitter is under new leadership, I will mention Twitter said it was my 7-year anniversary of being on the website, and they gave me a very pathetic thing to retweet to promote that, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. GameDeveloper.com is looking for more freelance writers. Rates start at $200 for approximately 800 worlds, and is negotiable for more in-depth writing. So they're trying to go in a different direction. I can't really complain about one video game news source having freelancers when they all have freelancers. It's just a sad statement that, like most jobs, that they're not really careers or things that pay enough. That's where I think the concept of a universal basic income to just cover the basic needs of food, clothing, and housing is so necessary, because the jobs that most people are offering these days are underpaying, under number of hours, often just busy work that could be immediately eliminated as soon as the company wanted to. It's not the old days where people literally needed farmers and farm hands, and they couldn't spare to lose a farm hand. Let's see. All right, one more tab. apparently the Twitch activity dock is not displaying properly in OBS. And the fix has been released by Twitch, and the activity that should have happened. So, like, the problem was, they said they were aware of the problem an hour ago. They fixed it 29 minutes ago from OBS. That's pretty good turnaround for OBS. In fairness, though, I will say OBS has been shockingly silent. Maybe they're just focused on suing Streamlabs for stealing their trademark, basically, and they're creating confusion. But they've been shockingly silent as far as any new features or any new version of OBS. But it works too, so I can't really complain about them not adding bloat to a software that works fine. And while there is a decent number of ideas I think you could put into OBS and continue to grow, they get crazier and crazier as you go down that route. Still scrolling down my Twitter feed. Yeah, 7 years on Twitter and really got nothing out of it other than a decent place to curate news sources. I've had no real personal interactions to speak of, maybe one or two over 7 years. I've not at all thought of it as a place to make friends or talk to people. Yeah, it would be fairly easy to jump off of Twitter into some other service, and we may very well have to do that. Everybody may very well have to do that if Twitter becomes kind of a crumbling apocalyptic what's the right phrase to use? Well, crumbling service, just abandoned service. And I think we may see people abandon Twitter more than most people have. Most people didn't. One of the podcasts I was listening to talked about how Twitter is very much a lean forward experience where you go to hear about news happening in the real world. It's not where you lean back to talk to your friends or look at ads or shop, and that's made it very hard to put advertising and have effective advertising on Twitter. The only story here really worth talking about is apparently Bioshock 4 setting and time period have reportedly leaked. The new installment is currently in the development at the new studio Cloud Chamber, which is, I'm not sure I even really knew that. Apparently it will take place during the 1960s, okay, in a fictional Antarctic city. Okay, so is it going to be on the ice, on the surface, and more open world? That might be a good way to go. 1960s is a little risky though, because I mean you dealt with racism a little bit, not I don't know if they actually dealt with it all in 1 or 2, but you definitely dealt with it in 3. Setting it still in the 1960s is going to be risky, but it could also be in some different reality. The problem though, I think though, if you're going to have more of an open world and it's just an ice environment, it's going to be very white and boring as far as the landscape. It might be white and boring as far as the people too. But yeah, I think there's some dangers there of it not really feeling like it's Bioshock. And they kind of ran into that problem as soon as they went with Bioshock Infinite and Bioshock 3. as a concept is that it stopped being about Rapture. It stopped being about economic concepts and types of rules or governance, and it started being more about race in 4 and more about just telling a kind of generic story instead of creating a world. So I'd almost want to see Rapture in Bioshock 4, Rapture as it felt in Bioshock 1 and 2, just being on ice. Maybe underwater on ice, maybe not even underwater, but get back to the feel of Rapture. And very much probably ignoring a lot of what happened in Infinite and bringing the series back to 1 and 2. Or, you know, just if they go their own way and it's just yet another different city in a different world and it's not in any way connected to 1, 2, or 3, that might be the best. That might work too. Like, at a certain point, I don't know why. Maybe Bioshock will just be games set in unique cities. But at a certain point, Prey is kind of a Bioshock game by that definition. Regardless, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.